minutes.
Probably. Yeah.
Probably.
All right, we're gonna kick this off. I actually have the easiest job in this meeting. Just wanted to welcome everybody. We have board members here. Maybe raise your hand if you're on the board so people know. Then we have some board members on the Zoom. We have actually former board members as well. Maybe raise your hand. There's at least two. There's exactly two. And then obviously we have a lot of staff as well. So maybe raise your hand if you're staff. Awesome. So, and then we have a lot of other people. This is our first public board meeting of the year. And so what we'll do today is we'll ask for we'll give an operational update on some of the things we've been doing. And then in the end, there will be time for Q&A. So we'll leave enough time for questions. So any question doesn't have to be about the operational update, but any question about the Drupal Association and the work we do, you're more than welcome to ask. And I'll pass it to Megan.
Great. So, oh, this is good. I'm recording this, so if I start to sit down, it's only because I don't want the people who will watch the recording to be watching my belly button. So, but I am really excited to have this public board meeting. It's my first one here in North America, and I have been in the executive director role now for, well, almost a year, just under a year. So it's very nice to be able to just share our messages and everything that the staff has been doing over the last couple of months. But it's also just as important for us to have these face-to-face conversations. So I'm looking forward to the Q&A too. And so let me just go through the agenda. Okay, let's move that down. So the agenda for today, just for those that are new, we have our standard board packet. It's nothing new. What's that? Oh, and share screen, I can do that. Let me share screen for those that are watching. Okay. Great. Good. So, so it's our standard board packet. Nothing's changed over the last, really the last couple of years when Holly Ross set this format up. So but just for those that are new to it, we have our agenda. We identify what committees we have and what board members are in those committees, how to participate. We have our committee updates. We've only had recently one committee meet, which is around finance. And just for time's sake, I'm going to make this public and you can read those kinds of updates on your own. And then we have operational updates, just what have we been focusing on in different areas around DrupalCon and Drupal.org. We talk about the highlights and also where there's been some challenges that we have our eye on that we need to focus on. So I'll let you read all of that on your own. We also have a dashboard of our work about the different key projects we're working on, as well as the metrics. And then I give an update in these packets of how we're doing. And so this is another thing you might want to go and read after after DrupalCon, when we all have like our brains working again. And so I mean, what I like about it is that we just try to be really transparent about where are things going well, but also you can see I just kind of stopped here on some red, like where are some areas that we really need to improve. And so, you know, it's good for us to be really honest about opportunities for improvement, but also areas where we can really celebrate successes. And it's always all of our successes because we always achieve anything we do together with the community. And so what we're going to do today is focus on the operational agenda that is in the orders of business here. We're going to hear from the engineering team about a couple of their recent milestones. We're also going to hear from Carrie Lucina, who's our Director of Revenue, about the industry pages that we recently launched. And then we are going to hear from Rebecca. Where's Rebecca? And so she's going to talk about DrupalCon Branding. And then I'm going to talk about what we are doing with our community challenges right now and how we are bringing everyone together through community discussions. I've asked Whitney Hess to come and give a brief update to the board. She's the one who's been mediating those discussions. I'll ask the board if they have any questions, and then I'll open it up to all of you for your questions as well. Then I'll see if there's anyone on Zoom who would like to ask questions through that. And just a heads up, I'm going to make sure we get through all of this, and I want to make sure we leave enough time at the end for Q&A. So if I do say that, if you see me telling a staff member, like either we're going to skip this one or make it shorter, it's only because I want to make sure we give the community the time to ask the questions that they have. And again, all of the presentations are linked into this document, so we can always go back and, you can see anything that we might have had to skip over. All right, and with that, I'd like to introduce our Director of Engineering, Tim Lennon, who will give an update right here.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and give an update on Drupal.org. Let me see if the present mode is going to work here. I'll give an update on Drupal.org, and I'd like to talk about kind of the journey from Dublin to Baltimore in terms of what we've been doing since the last public presentation about Drupal.org and the work that we do. We're going to start talking about the project application process changes and the revamp that was recently not quite completed, but the significant changes that have happened to that process. So basically, we're going to talk about how the old process of having to apply to be able to create full projects and releases on Drupal.org has changed, and how we have a new security advisory opt-in process for projects on Drupal.org. So we undertook this project in 4 phases that were pretty critical. One was making sure that as we made this change to allow anyone to contribute projects to Drupal.org without an application process, that we preserve important signals about those projects. Security advisory coverage signals, providing tools to allow the security team to manage that process so that they have an opt-in process and can manage the workload of new modules that are receiving coverage. Then opening the gates to allow any user to promote projects to full projects and create releases for them. And then to build tools that will help provide code quality signals, because we want it to be easier for new users of Drupal to discover the best modules to use, to see signals not just about security, but about code quality, about testing coverage, all those sorts of things. And we want to incentivize code review. So we're on that last step right now. We have already opened the gates, but I'll talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. So the security coverage signals we've added, if you maintain a project or use projects on Drupal.org, you've already started seeing these. We added these shield icons to indicate which releases on projects are stable releases that receive security advisory coverage from the security team to help keep people informed of those. We also added some signals to indicate when projects don't have releases that are covered and don't yet have stable releases. And we're working on a core patch to provide some of that signal within Drupal. We are also, we've also updated the advisory coverage process to be an opt-in process. So the maintainers of projects can work with the security team to be able to opt in their projects to receive security advisory coverage now, and something they'll do from their project pages. And finally, we want to provide some in-place messaging for all the new project maintainers on Drupal.org to understand what it means to cut a release of their project. And so we provide some messaging whenever you go to make a release to encourage people about making a stable release, about opting into security advisory coverage if that's what they want to do. So that was phase 1 of this project. And then with all those signals in place, we went ahead and opened the gates. And so we've actually seen a pretty significant uptick in some new projects being created on Drupal.org. We've seen users who have had accounts, brand new accounts, able to make projects for the first time, and some users who've had accounts that are 9 years old that made their first project. A lot of really cool things there. Some anecdotal things on Twitter of people who'd been hosting projects on GitHub because they couldn't navigate the old application projects, who said, hooray, I've just moved back over to Drupal.org. A lot of things that we wanted to see. And so we're looking to measure the impact of that and see what the contribution environment looks like after this change. What we're working on now is additional project quality indicators and just, again, as I said, project discovery indicators to help people evaluate projects. So we recently added the ability to star the modules that you use. So we're going to be able to use that in weighting the search for the most commonly used modules. We're looking at different ways to add code coverage signals. We haven't decided on exactly how we're doing that yet, but that's some sort of work in progress to focus on discovery and quality signals. There's a huge amount of people to thank when it comes to the change to the project applications process. It's something that's been in place since back when our version control was all before we were using Git. It's been a long time coming.
CVS,
yeah, back on CVS.
Sorry.
So it's been a many-year process, and there's been a lot of people involved in understanding the changes and understanding what we need to do to open up this process in a responsible way. So just thank you to all of these people. I can't list all the names. There's too many, but a lot of people helped us make this happen.
That's a big deal.
Thank you. All right, so the next thing I want to do is talk about the way we recognize contributions from organizations on the Drupal.org marketplace. So back in Dublin, we were talking about the introduction of the issue credits system, but wherein users could attribute their contributions to a particular organizational sponsor and how we were using that to rank the marketplace. Prior to DrupalCon Dublin, we studied that data with the help of Matthew Tift and Dries, and found that 69% of the contributions to Drupal were in some way attributed to an organization, whether that was an end user organization, an employer, a university, or even a client. So that was pretty enlightening. It put some data behind what was sort of anecdotal evidence that people had observed from who they knew in the community. But having observed that, we started thinking about ways to recognize not just these issue credit contributions, these code contributions, but other kinds of contributions. So as I said, we observed service providers, marketing agencies, integrators, technology and infrastructure companies, and end users, all as part of the contribution ecosystem. So those other types of contribution beyond code include these, and these are now all part of the marketplace ranking algorithm for organizations. So issue credits are still one of the primary factors, but we've now weighted them based on the most widely used modules. So contributions to core get the most significant impact on an organization's marketplace ranking and on the other modules that are most widely used. And then we also add additional contribution credits rather than issue credits. You can think of them as additional weight for organizations that have provided Drupal 8 case studies in order to promote adoption of Drupal 8 by showing off the best success stories. For supporting partners of the Drupal Association who help us maintain the infrastructure, for organization members, and for organizations that are listed as supporting projects by the maintainers of those projects. So we introduced that shortly after Dublin, and have been monitoring those changes and seeing how that impacts the kind of contribution economy around Drupal. What's next for contribution credit and the notion of crediting contributions? For individuals, we're thinking about how we can extend some of these ideas. The notion of a ranking algorithm makes plenty of sense in the context of organizations in a marketplace, but for individual contributors, it might not be the right way to recognize those contributions. There's this notion of thinking about a user's profile sort of as their CV within, their contributor's CV within Drupal. And so we're thinking about ways to pull in the kinds of contributions that people do and recognize them on the profile in different ways. For organizations, we do want to expose those contributions of the non-service provider orgs better. The marketplace, of course, is for those who are providing services. We also have an all organizations view where you can find universities, you can find community groups. One of the most significant contributing community groups is actually an organization page for the community of Ukraine, and they're within the top 15 contributors if you look at all organizations. So we want to make that more visible. And then we want to revisit the study that Matthew and Dries did together to get the next year's worth of data and see how it's evolved since that was originally done. I'd also like to give a brief update on the Technical Advisory Committee. So the Technical Advisory Committee consists of Angie, Moshe, Steve, and Angie Byron, Moshe Weitzman, Steve Francia, who are helping us to evaluate developer tooling options for Drupal.org. So we have a process that we've been going through for some time. We did some initial evaluation. We did a deep dive with staff in Portland. There were some initial recommendations made to the board. We recently posted a blog post talking about some of the short list of options. And now we're at the phase of looking at prototyping and kind of a pilot program. So we'll go from there, evaluate with the community and gather feedback, and then figure out how we prioritize this work. But just to recap some of what was in the recent blog post, we've been exploring a few options in tooling, whether that's GitLab for developer tools, GitHub, continued enhancements to Drupal.org's tools, and the way that any kinds of integrations would work. And so we've also had some meetings here at DrupalCon, so we'll have more updates and another blog post coming out in a few weeks. And yes, thank you again to the Technical Advisory Committee for working with staff to help figure this out. And
Is it maybe easier to work?
so, so the last thing I'd like to update on is something that not everybody may have seen, but is that the Drupal Association is currently, we've put out an RFP for infrastructure services, and we have a number of different potential partners who are sort of currently working on proposals. More or less what we're doing is looking for a partner who can help focus on the lower level infrastructure, the middle of the night pages to make sure that Git is still running, all that kind of stuff, so that we can focus on mission work as the association team that directly serves the community, that's features for the community in a direct way and not just the kind of keeping the lights on with the servers. So we're going through that process. It's not yet complete. I don't have any announcements. But the timeline, we posted a request for information to solicit vendors on the 9th. We received letters of interest on the 24th. And we've actually just extended the proposal deadline from the 28th to the 8th. So my slide is now out of date as of this morning. But we'll be getting proposals and evaluating those as the association with some of our infrastructure team volunteers to see if we can find a partnership that will help us manage the association infrastructure. So, finally, there's a lot more that we've done in the past several months that I just don't have time to talk about today. So I'll be giving a session on Drupal.org tomorrow at noon. If you're interested in learning more about what we've done, including things like the stable release of the Composer facade, coding standards checking available in Drupal CI, documentation enhancements for Contrib in particular, and the community initiative of putting together the Drupal 8 user guide and getting that published. So we'll have that and other updates, as well as a Q&A specifically with the engineering team tomorrow in room 321.
Excellent, great job. Okay, next up is Carrie Lucina, our Director of Revenue, talking about the industry pages.
Sorry about standing at the podium, but
You can if you want. That's all right.
Oh, it's already up.
Oh, it
So
is?
it's hot.
Oh, look at
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm here to talk about the new Drupal.org industry pages, which is an initiative that the association launched back in February. We initially launched 3 pages focusing on higher education, government, and media and publishing. These pages were designed to inform and inspire technical evaluators and connect them to service providers and technology vendors who can help them further along in their Drupal adoption journey. We also wanted to showcase the community's innovation and creativity and their ability to help solve end users' challenges and their problems. This is also a pretty valuable resource that Drupal businesses can point to as they're pitching Drupal. This is a really high-level idea of what one of the pages looks like, Drupal for Government, but I'll go through the content points in a little bit more detail. We knew anecdotally that this is something that the community really needed. We heard from many shops that they were sending evaluators to Drupal.org and there was just no meaningful content for them. And this was very much validated by the positive feedback that we got when we were doing user research against these pages. For example, somebody who worked in the government sector said, you know, this is amazing. I wish I had this information when I was pitching my state CIO on Drupal. The association staff, we framed the concept and then we reached out to different parts of the community for input. So we talked to decision makers and influencers at end user organizations, as well as agencies who pitch Drupal solutions within these verticals. And we made a call to the larger community for feedback. We also analyzed how users were interacting with existing content on Drupal.org, like case studies, to help us inform some of our decisions. This is a phased launch, so we just launched these first 3 verticals, and right now we're just learning and trying to improve the pages as we go. The second phase will be to add additional industry pages like healthcare, finance, nonprofit, or e-commerce. And as we continue to build out this initiative, we're going to continue to take feedback from the global community. The industry pages are part of the About Drupal section that's promoted on the homepage of Drupal.org, which is the highest traffic page in the site. It gets 350,000 visitors a month. And we do know that 50% of those users are new to Drupal.org. Try Drupal, About Drupal, and case studies get the highest engagement rates, so we can make certain assumptions about those users, like they're probably more technical and they're trying to learn about or evaluate Drupal. So the content was primarily designed for users that know about Drupal at a high level, and they're leaning towards some open source solution. We didn't want to assume that every user knew what Drupal was, so we kept that in mind as well, since some people will find the content through search. And we're also serving up personalized content. The case studies are geo-targeted for the Americas, AMIA, and APEC regions. And this is really important just to show localized brand names and case studies, just to help show evaluators that Drupal is really a viable option for them. So for example, these are the case studies that we show in the Americas, AMIA versus APEC. Here's a closer up picture of what the page looks like. And the story that we're trying to tell is that Drupal is the open source CMS of choice within this industry, and we're telling that with really meaningful stats about adoption rates, like 71% of the top 100 universities use Drupal. We're also telling the story that it's not just Drupal and it's very customizable. Drupal Solutions entail Drupal plus various third-party integrations and an expert host to get you your vertical specific solution. And then, of course, we tell the story with case studies that were built by well-respected agencies within the community. It's also a good opportunity to tee up correlating summits that happen at DrupalCon. So in this case, we're promoting the media, the government, and the higher ed summits at Baltimore. And then if the user is ready to talk to an expert, they can fill out this lead form to get additional information from sponsoring partners. Just a little bit of information about sponsor participation. The phase 1 launch does include sponsors for the Americas region. Because this was very premier visibility on the homepage of Drupal.org, but it also had very limited availability, we had to try and find a way to fund this work and make it as fair as possible. So when we went out and offered this to partners, we did sort of an internal ranking system that considered code contribution levels, years of supporting partner participation, as well as whether or not they had relevant case studies. And in order to get this out the door and just get an MVP up and running, we haven't secured sponsors for AMIA or APEC. We just selected case studies that already existed on the site, and we're promoting the marketplace filtered by those regions. And over time, we will open it up to sponsors as well. So just a quick thank you to the launch sponsors that helped us get this off the ground by providing all the really great content, and the organizations that participated in our user research, as well as the community at large that gave us really valuable feedback. And this is definitely a joint effort with many different parts of the community, and so we really appreciate it and are excited about it. So.
Yeah. Lots more work to do.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, we're gonna make it through all the things. So now, Rebecca. So Rebecca joined us mid-December as our new marketing and communications manager. She hit the ground running.
Can I sit here? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about DrupalCon branding. What is the DrupalCon brand? This is a question that I don't know if you've asked yourself, but it really depends on where you've been and which location you're at what year. You can see there are some consistencies, but there really isn't a true DrupalCon identity. And this historically, because they've been built around the city, and there's a unique brand and website for each location, which has some really great pros. The community gets really involved. People get really excited about what's going to be the next city, what's it going to look like. But it also provides some issues that we need to solve for. We don't have a clear identity, which is a problem when you want to have a recognizable brand to draw new people to the conference, to get new attendees, speakers, end users to attend, and creating an environment for more collaboration and innovation with new people and new blood. It's also a huge inefficiency in both time and money. Creating a new brand and website for every single DrupalCon is a big undertaking. So we are really estimating this at this point in the process, but we think this is probably going to save about $10,000 per con, so about $20,000 a year, plus a lot of time on staff time for engineering and marketing, which is a big deal. So moving forward, we're going to look at, we're going to have a unified DrupalCon brand. It's going to hopefully create a visual unity and visual identity that goes between each DrupalCon, but also has elements that tie DrupalCon to Drupal and the association as well. Specifically, our goals here are to have brand recognition for the conference, make it clear to community, to outsiders, and on the website what DrupalCon is, and then also allow for future expansion and different site functionality, content architecture that makes sense for what we're doing. So we did an RFP. We had amazing responses. There are some really incredible designers and developers in this community. We went with 2 interviews, and we chose 611, who are over here. Thank you for joining us. They are they're out of Italy. They're currently working on our Vienna branding and have started with 2018 and our new brand as well. So we started with brand elements. When you start a branding process, I don't know who here knows branding process, but you think about what you want to convey in your communication. And for DrupalCon, that is technology and human aspect, and that's what we identified. So for that technology side, we have the hexagon modular shape, and then for the human side, a more fluid circular drop shape that represents the community in Drupal Association. It also has a grid technology aspect, which speaks to technology, but also speaks to convergence and all of these things coming together into one space. And we create DrupalCon. Be human, think digital. Yeah. So within this brand, you'll see the drop, which is a unique drop specifically designed for DrupalCon, but maintains the same shape as some of the other drops that it used. It also has this hexagon modular shape for the technological side. It breaks down into hexagons, but also triangles and other shape aspects that can be used in different ways. So these are just examples of what merchandising might look like at future DrupalCons. And you will see elements used in standard ways from event to event, but you'll also see we don't want to lose the city aspect. So there will be certain things that change depending on where you are, and you'll be able to see the first iteration of that tomorrow when we announce 2018. And that's the new DrupalCon.
Great. All right. Well, I wish I could have all of the staff come up and give an operational update because they have been working so hard and doing amazing things. I'm just very, very proud, and I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to work with all of them. So stay tuned for other board meetings. I'm sure you'll beat them to other ones. And I'm sorry. Okay, we're going to do the board question, so I'll make sure to ask that one, Tiffany, when we get to the board Q&A. Excellent. Now, so I would like to, yeah, this one right here. So I think everyone in the room knows we've been going through some community challenges recently. And I'm just really glad we have this opportunity to be here face to face for those that are able to make it here into this meeting. Obviously, it's just a small group. And there's so many more people in this community that need an opportunity to be heard and hear others and process some things that they've been hearing. There's lots of ideas that are coming out of our recent community challenges, such as our governance and what does that need to look like, and what is self-governance? How do you create that? What are all the boundaries between the DA and the project lead and the community working groups, right? There's just all these really important questions. And you know, I've been in listening mode. I know I've said that in writing, and sometimes it might have sounded as if like that's just what you say. But it's actually very true. Just a quick little background, as I worked for the state of New Jersey and did a lot of public hearings. And I spent 5 years going into communities when we'd have to tell them that we're going to increase the cost of their buses and trains. And especially when you go into Newark or Camden or Jersey City, it's you know, you're dealing with low-income communities that can barely afford to get to work. And now you're making it harder, right? It's just, and they're angry, right? And they have questions and concerns and fears, and you have to be present and listen to all of it, right? I mean, even if it just feels like there's more of a mob in that room than there is, you know, a discussion, it's important to be present and open and vulnerable to all of that, because someone in that room has an answer, and someone in that room has a good question that needs an answer. And, you know, when you're in government or when you're in these kinds of leadership roles, it's your job to hear those things and help solve them. So I just want to let you know that's where I've been coming from over the last couple of weeks. And that's where I'm going to continue to be, you know, in my mindset of how I want to approach all these community questions. And I think we've identified as a community lots of different things that we want to talk about, but we needed a good, safe place to have those conversations that are constructive. And so that is why we came up with the community discussions. These are a series of conversations that are being mediated by Whitney Hess. And we wanted to start right away. So we have some here at DrupalCon. So we have a room
that is holding sessions that range from 15 people maximum for those that really want to have a more intimate conversation. Sometimes it can be overwhelming to be with a lot of people. But we also have some of the sessions timed at, set for 45 people to participate. Because some people just want to hear other people talk and kind of process what they're hearing. Maybe they don't want to speak, but maybe they do. And so we've tried to be diverse and lower any barriers to get people to participate. You know, there is certainly a bit of privilege to be able to fly in and come to a conference and participate in this. So we also wanted to make sure we recognize that and recognize we're a global community. We want to hear from everyone. And so we have made virtual meetings as well that will be hosted on Zoom. And don't start throwing plates. Yeah, they're going to be hosted on Zoom, and we're going to have them timed so they kind of hit different time zones around the world, right? So everyone can participate. And hopefully there's enough options for all of them. And then, of course, Whitney will be mediating those as well. And the other thing, too, is we want to be as transparent as possible. Not everyone's going to want to come to these sessions, but as you can see in like the diversity and inclusion Slack, it's sometimes just nice to follow along, but you have to know where to go, right? So we want to have a canonical place on Drupal.org. It's really easy for everyone to follow along in the process. So what we've done is we have created a page in the community section of Drupal.org. And we are going to post meeting minutes from all of these sessions so that everyone can have the opportunity to see what the discussions were, what the points were. It does not disclose who said what. You know, there's no identifiers in there. We make sure anything like that is removed. And so it's, you know, we'll be having blogs and reminding people what the next session is and where to go find the meeting minutes and having summaries. And really right now what we want out of this is to ground the community and the association, like really everyone in the voice of the community. Because, you know, there is quite a spectrum. And I like to say let's not manage by loudocracy. There's a lot of people that have a lot to say and are very comfortable speaking out loud, but there are a lot of people who are not speaking up, or at least not publicly. Maybe they'll come to me privately, right? So how do we hear all the people in the full spectrum? And so these are designed so that we can get grounded in the true community voice. In all the things that we're going to hear and all the themes, I'm confident that we're all going to be able to work together and look at this and say, like, you know what, let's do this. Let's move in this direction. So I'm really excited to get to that point. But right now, we need to have these constructive dialogues. And so you can find all this information in the blog post that I put on Drupal.org. It's on the front page. It has all the information about the community discussions, the times, the places, etc. So I just encourage you to go if this is a topic of importance to you. I'm assuming it is. And I also encourage you to, you know, tweet about it, let other people know that this is a resource for everyone. So I think with that, I'd like to introduce Whitney Hess, who has been mediating these, and we're just really fortunate to work with her. We've worked with her in the past on a community project, but I'll let her kind of come on up and introduce herself, and also give us a, ooh, it's all right, safety first.
Thank you, Megan. Sure. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to keep it brief. I am incredibly grateful to have the opportunity and the trust of the board and the community to facilitate and mediate these community sessions. We have held 3 sessions so far. They were held yesterday. We have 2 today and 2 tomorrow. And so far, we have 7 scheduled in May, as Megan said, at a variety of times so that people around the world can participate at times that are convenient for them. We will add more sessions if we need to ensure that everyone who wants to be heard has an opportunity to be heard. Now, having only had 3 sessions so far, I'm hesitant to name themes, but I do want to share what we are hearing, that there are a lot of unmet needs in the community. And the ones that are coming up most frequently are safety, transparency, understanding, clarity, trust, progress, and healing. I think many of us can identify with feeling that we need these things as well. Now, there is a tremendous appreciation for the safe spaces that we have created, and there is a desire for more of these spaces at Drupal camps and local meetups. There is a desire for clarification of Dries' many hats, where his authority begins and ends, which hat he's wearing when he's making any particular decision, and consideration for sharing the responsibility with others to avoid conflicts of interest, whether in reality or in perception. There's also a desire for a community-elected group for dispute and conflict resolution who receive training to do this effectively. And whom they report to is TBD, but there's also a desire for more community-elected seats on the Drupal Association board as well. And lastly, when cases arise, there's a real desire for informing all parties immediately, providing clear communication with the community that balances transparency and privacy at every stage in the process. So thank you again for the opportunity to mediate these discussions. I hope to see many of you there, and I look forward to sharing more of our findings as we continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Again, I just encourage you all to attend these sessions. We definitely want to hear your voices. And so right now, probably should have arranged it differently because I'm sure that would have opened up tons of questions from the community. But I have in here that we need some questions from the board. It could be about any of the operational updates or anything else they really want to ask. So I'm going to read Tiffany's first. And so this is a question for about the branding. And the typography is different from the word mark for Drupal Association and Drupal itself. What is the advantage of the approach?
Sure.
Do you want to come use the microphone?
Sure.
So there's purpose and advantage. The purpose being that it have a unique identifiable brand that is its own. The advantage being that while Drupal and Drupal Association have different typography, and it's a more playful sort of community typography. The Drupal Con typography is specifically designed to fit the new brand as a whole and provide that fun and flair, but also provide it in a way that is I don't want this to come across wrong, but in a sophisticated way that reaches broader audience outside of the community. That was the
Good answer.
So, right.
Yeah.
So does that mean we started with the Drupal word mark and started with that font and then rule it out and said that's not appropriate for going here? Or
No,
have we
not at
this
all.
with the
No, we didn't start there. We just knew that we wanted to do something different, and that DrupalCon has never had the same typography.
So kind of just like start from a clean slate.
Yep.
Do something up there and say,
Totally.
okay.
Yep. Any is
I just had to follow up to that because I did like how the DrupalCon branding matched the city. It felt very much like the concert poster
yeah.
idea. Does that mean that method will be totally thrown out, or will there still be some customizable part based on words?
There will still be some customizable factors within each city. Some of them are yet to be determined. We've really just gotten to the starting basics in the past month that we've been working on it, but there are going to be, you'll see the hexagon and you'll see the DrupalCon and the language that we use around it. And you'll see specific elements, whether it's a hexagon in one city or a triangle in another city or a circle somewhere else, those things might change, as well as some of the visuals that we use in the branding. Yeah. Is this?
I answer the questions.
Sure.
We just have 2 minutes left for the board questions.
Okay, so quickly on that, I think one of the things on this cost savings is we either reprint a lot of signs.
Mhm.
You know, we reprint pamphlets, signs, signage, we here, go left, go right. I mean, we were putting things like arrows.
Yeah.
Happens this way every single con. It's like this one's with this purple one, right? It's largely expensive. If we went that route to this point, I'm assuming there's some sort of demarcation of saying these are repeatable and these aren't going to change. These are going to change.
Yes.
Have you guys come to that yet, or still?
We're still working on it, but largely a lot of the print signage on site will remain the same, and we will have to reprint, to be clear. We can't transfer them from location to location for various reasons, but the imaging and the cost savings in that arena will come from designer time, having a standard template.
Reprinting is one thing.
Yep.
Redesigning
Yes.
an arrow.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks. I didn't mean to rush. I just wanted to make sure I leave time for the community too. That's a community member?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, I'll come back to that one. So, but just one more question from the board. Board have any more questions? Go ahead.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome back, Jacob.
She said, welcome back.
On the infrastructure responses that you're getting right now, about roughly how many have you received, and is there any sort of common themes you're seeing, like any direction? You got the responses back. I saw the deck, but you said you received.
No, we got letters of interest for people who are going to respond to receive the full RFP, but we haven't gotten the actual final proposals back yet. So we actually don't have that yet.
Is that a strong response? Like, do you feel good about how many people have said yeah?
I do feel good about the breadth of candidates that we have.
Good breath.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, time for one more. Anyone else on the board have a question?
I was going to follow up on another thing about the infrastructure. So we do currently use some infrastructure from, I guess, some of these providers, right? We use some external infrastructure.
Well, actually, mostly our current infrastructure is at the open source lab. And actually, within the scope of the RFP, it may be possible that we offered two options for kind of those proposals. One is for managed services using some of our existing infrastructure, and one is for kind of a complete package. And participants might bid on either one or both of those options. So, but right now we do use like Amazon Web Services for Drupal CIA. We use Open Source Lab for the existing server infrastructure for D.O itself. Yeah, we have a few things in a few places. But
Okay, so one quick follow-up. So any learnings from like what they do with these providers feeding into this? Any risks you see from this transition?
That's a kind of a broad question.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'll try to keep it like relatively brief. Our primary goal is to better enable the on-staff team again to focus on the feature development side. So the clear focus of the RFP process is to find someone who we feel will be successful at being responsible for the lower level elements. And so if we did not feel confident in that, we would not select any of the proposals. That option is still on the table. So, yep.
Great. Good questions. Thank you. All right. Well, let's go ahead and open it up to the community. You can, this is your time to ask questions. And if we don't have answers, I want to make sure I get your name so that I could research the answer and get it to you. But we'd love to field those questions and start to answer that. Yeah, I'll do that one second. Go ahead.
I have a question about the branding. I'm curious why you didn't, or maybe you did, consider the approach of just having an identifiable logo that you then use to build into a continuous website or arrow signs or whatever, but that the city actually creates banner that uses the link and stuff.
That is good. I mean, I really would want to give that to Rebecca.
So do you mean that the city community itself would build the site, would build the?
No, the site would be consistent, but you would just need to change the banner.
I'll say that one thing that we talked about with the website is that we currently have the infrastructure set up and we have to essentially archive each city. And so we have to rebuild the site each time. And that doesn't necessarily immediately change the brand, but we're hoping to go to a place where there's less backlift. And we can save all the sessions, we can have all those evaluations and the registration data, and we don't end up with like a massive site with hundreds and hundreds of videos and registers and things like that. So it's part of the eventual process of shipping.
Great. All right. Okay. I'm going to ask this question from Bohan Shah. What is revenue from various countries and what is the assistance given back to these countries? That's a really good question. I don't have the revenue broken down by countries, but I can do that. It would include both, you know, ticket sales. We definitely track where people are coming from when they buy tickets. Membership, we track that in our donor database. And then, of course, through Salesforce, where we track all of our supporter sales and our sponsorship sales. So we have all that data, and I could break it down by country, and I'd be happy to get that back out to you. And then in terms of return, you know, our two main platforms that we focus on is DrupalCon and Drupal.org. Drupal.org serves 20 million unique visitors. And so I'd say that's pretty global. When I look at the statistics, I'd be happy to share the statistics so you can see how that money is being used to pay for the hosting and the engineers who are working on the developer tools and everything else that Drupal.org has to offer. Yeah, and so I could show you the costs and then also the impact it's having in the different regions. We can get you the regional geographic data on that. As for DrupalCon, right now we're doing 2 DrupalCons a year, and so there's one in the U.S. and then one in Europe. In the past, we have done a 3rd DrupalCon a year. One was in Bogota, Colombia, and the other one was in Mumbai, India. And Australia. Oh, right, and we did Australia and Sydney, right? It's like the only one I haven't gone to since I've been here. I know, I can hear Donna right now.
Donna, yeah.
And so, you know, of course, we want to see what we can do in terms of DrupalCon and supporting other communities. Right now, we are focusing on securing our financial health. And doing that 3rd one was putting a lot of pressure on our budgets because it was always operating at a loss. And so we just need to get stronger footing. And then from there, we can start to kind of look at that again. So hopefully that, you know, I try to just give you a broad, high-level view into that, Bohan, but I'm going to have to remember your name. I'm looking at the screen, Bohan Shah. So I'll look you up and I can get you that information and share it out.
I would say at a high level, and just my gut, so I could be wrong, I feel like we make most of our money in North America, really. And when we do DrupalCons, the other non-North America events are more of an investment for us.
True.
So there is sort of a redistribution, for lack of a better term, from money coming from North America that goes to the other regions.
Yeah, that is true.
At a high level.
Also grants and scholarships and
yeah, and Bohan, if you didn't hear that, I forgot to mention that we have DrupalCon scholarships that help people from around the world be able to come to DrupalCon, and we have the community cultivation grants. So like in my, when I introed for Dries, I was able to highlight a few of those recipients from Mexico and Vietnam and the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Support camps as well, right?
Well, we are fiscal sponsors of camps. So that's us providing a nonprofit kind of like bank, so they don't get taxed and we can hold their money and they don't have to put in their personal bank account. Yeah. So that's, you know, a way of supporting, just not financial. Yeah. Great. Any other questions in the room? Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, with the opening of the gates for modules,
Yes.
I have a couple thoughts on that. Number one is there used to be, there has historically been a lot of discussion about new modules, about the simpler modules that already exist, and asking why don't you just help with that older module. So I think with the opening of the gates, we're now going to have a lot of similar modules. It seems to me that we might want to think about putting some emphasis on telling people about similar modules again on the module page.
Yeah, I think, you know, we have our follow-up issue for sort of phase 4 of this process, where I focus mostly on code quality signals, also includes thinking about that duplicate module problem.
Great.
We're trying to figure out ways. It's hard to necessarily programmatically identify whether the module serves the same purpose, but maybe ways of reporting that and then making that information available to both maintainers so they can think about teaming up. Yeah.
Great. And the second thing is that if you're not already, I think you're going to need to be prepared for the fact that sites out in the wild are going to be using modules that don't have the review, the security review that they've had in the past, and that Drupal is going to be blamed for security hacks.
Yeah, that's potentially a concern, and that's what, but it's mitigated by a couple of factors. So one of the big problems with the old process is that people who couldn't get through the application process, who are waiting for 6 months or a year or more.
Oh, I'm not complaining.
I know.
I don't want to put down the change. I think it's a good change, but I think you just need to be prepared.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I think that's a problem that's already existed, is what I'm trying to get at. Because once someone took that and just hosted it on GitHub instead, people may have started using it on their Drupal sites, and they would still think that it's a fundamental problem with Drupal, not realizing that it was maybe not hosted on the home of the project. So I think that part of what addresses that is those better security signals that we want to have on the project pages, where people can now find that information, and then hopefully within core, if we can get that patch over the finish line, and that'll help. I think that'll help address that. It'll keep people informed in a way that actually we haven't even done before today. So.
Great, and just for those that are on Zoom, they can't hear anything, so I'm going to repeat questions, but just for those that are listening in on Zoom, that was just a nice caution of kind of like Drupal's brand and people's perception of Drupal now that modules aren't going through the security review.
Yeah, well, they are as soon as they opt in.
Yes, right. Good point. Any other questions? Oh, okay, go ahead.
So I'm interested in knowing more about the organization contribution credit system.
Sure.
And the work that you're doing around organizations contributions. Specifically, I've looked at our organization's membership, and there are people that have moved on that still are listed.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering if it can be improved such that, or what you're thinking about in terms of improvement. Maybe it's,
yeah, so the question is, how are we managing how a person with a user account on DrupalOrg marks what organization they're part of, and letting the organization page owners actually control all of that. Yeah, that's something we certainly need to fix. We have a couple ideas on that. We just need to get that sort of squared away. Ideally, we'd be able to have the organization owner moderate who can, list. So that'll be on the list.
And that would also control the contribution credits as well, right? So
it should. I would think we would architect it in that way so that it would be based on those ones selected by the organization owner. That's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, I know you had a question.
Yeah, just about the DA staff. Really quick, is there any resurgence of a community staffer for the G.D.O groups? Because I was just in the community summit, and we'd like to know who's taking over for that, or who should field our findings.
The question is, do we have plans to bring in a community staffer to take over GDO, because it's D6 and it needs some help,
No,
right?
I meant just as a dedicated staff member for community. We used to have, a few. So I don't know who's handling that role, if you are, or if Marcom. If we have community section questions or input, who's fielding that on the DA?
That is a really good question. So we are definitely smaller. So just, yeah, so for those that are on Zoom, it was clarified as just who is on staff that is answering questions, like an online community manager, basically. And the answer is right now, because we're smaller, we don't have a dedicated person. We do get questions that come in. And really, we kind of crowdsource them as staff just to bridge the gap in that area. It's certainly something we have been seeing in the last 6 weeks as a big need. So that's the answer. Maybe not the best one. Okay. That'd be great. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So I have a question about things that not necessarily specifically about one specific incident or the decision that was made, but more generally, from you and from your two different viewpoints where you said what's been learned so far about how whatever the decision is, how it's communicated. If that was, you feel that was done effectively, or what differently, another potentially volatile decision has to be made in the future.
So just to repeat the question, it was, given the recent decisions that were made and how it was communicated, what are our learnings so that the next go around when there's something sensitive to communicate, how can we do it better, right?
Let me just start.
Sure.
All right. This is Jace, for those on Zoom. I don't know if you can see me. I think we've learned a lot, obviously. First of all, I would like to say that the way this came about was unexpected, right? So in this particular instance, that person decided to go public. And really what that did is it left everyone, me, Megan, the community working group, with various sort of loose ends, if you will, where we hadn't sort of aligned everything. There was a lot of open decisions that needed to be made still. At the same time, we had a sudden need to communicate. So we definitely made mistakes, and it starts with me communicating, and we could have communicated way better. But we were under a lot of pressure when we had to communicate, and that was a contributing factor to the communication not being great. So I would say in a normal situation, we go through a process, and in that process, we would obviously get better in sort of preparing for communication and all of these things. So I think, how do we prepare better in exceptional situations? It's always a little bit difficult, but there's definitely a lot of lessons learned where I think we would immediately do things different. For example, the blog post that I did, I should probably have waited instead of trying to, literally what happened is I sort of woke up and there's all this, activity on social media, and a lot of it was, heated, let's say. and so I felt the need to communicate quickly. And I think one lesson learned is to probably, take our time and to really, figure out the right communication in sort of as a group, not just, me as an individual. But that's one immediate reaction. I think a lot of things that we learned is that maybe that our code of conduct needs potentially some work. So it doesn't stop or start. Sorry, it goes beyond just communication as well. There's a lot of different things that we weren't prepared for. So I'm not sure if you want to add something or not.
Sure.
Maybe cancel the screen share.
Oh yeah, we can cancel screen share. Sorry, I'm just going to cancel screen share so we can see people's faces. So I think you know, I echo a lot of what? Oh, is he making a face? Oh, Mesa. Thank you for the plucky relief. Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that Drew said. I think from the association standpoint, it's, you know, in some ways I'm still processing, but I think that the number one thing is just remembering to be very empathetic with communications. I think in extreme times, so some of the feedback I got, as well as, you know, even just reading my post, it has a different voice, right? I think it comes off as terse and like very corporate. And there are reasons for that. And I don't want to go into it, but it's very much tied to the situation and that Drew's described. Also, just not really sure how to say it without going too far, because there's so much that was just happening all at once, right? And so it's like you want to say something, but at the same time, you know, everyone wants so much more and you can't give it to them. So I think that the communication was, I knew it would never make the mark, but I could have at least been more empathetic in my communication and not taken the advice of being so corporate statement, right? Because guess what? We're not a corporate. I'm the only business in this entire situation, right? Like, we are a nonprofit, we're a business, but we can't talk like a business. It's not our culture to talk like that, and to change the way we communicate suddenly around a really hard issue where there's all these questions just adds more questions. And it's also just frankly shitty, right? I mean, that's how it kind of comes off. So those are just some things. There's just so much more that I'm processing in terms of communication. You know, when I worked for the state of New Jersey, just using that example again, you know, they were on the 5 o'clock news like every day. That PR, you know, the PR part, someone gets hit by a bus, right? You know, there's a train collision, something derails, right? Like every day something would happen, they could be on the news and they had a story. And we were like 100% the opposite of that, because we are such a great, wonderful community that we've never had to think about crisis communication, you know? And boy, I'm really sorry we didn't, because we could have done a lot better job helping all of us get through this with better communication. So that's one area that I'm really gonna focus on too. I'd rather plan for the worst and always aim for the best. But anyhow, I hope that somewhat answers your question.
One quick follow-up. So do you feel, you know, hopefully we don't have many more volatile decisions going forward, but if something, you know, something happened tomorrow, do you feel more confident now? Do you feel like, oh, thank God we learned all that we learned. We now feel confident, and we're more confident in this?
I can definitely say yes. You know, I mean, that confidence also comes from some more retrospectives, really making sure we got all the learnings. Like, that's why we have Whitney, is to help us hear those voices, right? There are some things that we hear and understand, but there's blind spots, right? So we're looking for the blind spots. But we definitely found resources. You know, I just mentioned we became smaller as an organization, right? So we don't have a this and we don't have a that, but now I know who to go to for this and that. And but I think what will give us even more confidence is when we actually have the plans in place, and you know, we have training internally of how to use those new plans, whether it's communication or you know, new code of conducts, and how to monitor that and what that means. And you know, there's just so much that we have to do, and I think the confidence comes from the doing.
I have one question specifically to the community discussions that happen right now. So far I heard very good things of doing it, and I think it's a very good process and idea. I heard the concerns that people don't really know what's going to happen. The blog post only says there were meeting minutes written, and I was wondering if there is already something planned, and if can that be communicated, because I think it goes back to all of that transparency. People get invited into rooms, but they don't really know where is my voice going to be used later on.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, and for those on Zoom that couldn't hear it, the question is, it's great that you're having community discussions and you're taking meeting minutes, but no one knows what's happening afterwards. And so that's great to hear. So thank you. I just put up on the screen where we are putting the meeting minutes on Drupal.org. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is like, maybe I need to tweet that out.
I think you're saying what are the results?
Yeah. Is that the only thing that happen, or is we like writing a public blog post to condense like everything in one?
Yeah, come on over. And is everyone okay? I just want to do a time check. We are over 1 o'clock. I know other people have sessions, but I'm okay staying a little bit longer. Okay.
So thank you for bringing that up. And my personal aim is to provide the greatest degree of transparency in my process as possible so that this process helps meet some of the community's needs. The reason why that hasn't been communicated yet is because all of this came about very quickly. So we're still trying to catch up. But I'll tell you what the process has been so far and what we're aiming for it to be, with the understanding this might be revised. So far I have been engaged in a discovery process where I've been having one-on-one private interviews with a wide variety of people around the community in leadership positions and not, just to get as many different perspectives on the situation as possible and ideas for long-term changes that can be made to community governance and community management in general. Are having these discussions here at DrupalCon and the discussions being held online for the global community. From there, I will be pulling together themes that I'm hearing across what the shared needs are that are not currently being met, and some strategies for how to get those needs met. Changes that need to happen with the governance model, changes that may need to happen with the code of conduct, etc. I will be sharing those findings with the board and with the community, and we may also have a way for the community to come together to refine those ideas and to start to create a strategy for how this needs to be addressed. That's the initial phase that we're in now. After that, we'll be in the implementation phase where we take those ideas and that planning and we start to actually make concrete changes to things. We don't know what's yet going to come. We don't want to be overly prescriptive. We don't want to have too rigid of a process that doesn't allow the community to really be heard and direct where this goes. So we're being purposefully fluid and maybe a little bit vague so that we allow for that direction to change based on the community input.
I think without saying that you will consolidate everything, that will be shared with everybody.
Absolutely.
Not specifically only with the board. I think that's the danger of people, that they say like, yeah, who
Absolutely.
does that go to? That would help. You know, people understand. I think everybody understands that you will not come out with the solution to everything, and that's what you're going to be implementing.
Yes.
Saying that the information are not being consolidated, we give to everybody and not everybody to need to go through meeting because.
Agreed. Not everything is fully captured in that as well. Yes, that will absolutely be done. I will make a point with Megan to ensure that that is communicated, and I really appreciate your question and bringing this to light so we can do something about it. Thank you.
Sorry, are there any deadlines for the kind of first steps on this whole process? So
yes.
When you could, maybe some days where you feel you could be able to share some initial gathering?
Yes, there have been. So far we have set the end of June for a strategy to be completed around planning what needs to be changed, not implementing it. That will have multiple milestones between now and then, with the more formal communication around the themes that we hear from the community discussions coming at the end of May once the online sessions have been completed. Thank you.
So is that documented somewhere on the site?
That's what he was just raising, that we haven't formally communicated that out to the community what the process is. And the reasoning for that is that I've only been engaged very recently, and we had a lot of planning to do for DrupalCon. So my apologies for not being able to get that sooner, but it is my #1 priority coming out of this week. Thank you.
Maybe that could be on the page there.
All right, I'm gonna have to just take one more question because I know some board members have meetings. Is that okay? Okay, yeah. So who would like to ask the last question? Go ahead. Oh, sorry, since you went once, would you like to?
Sure. So your blog post talked about the mission of the Drupal Association and its connection to specifically Drupal.org and DrupalCon.
Mm-hmm.
Is the idea that these community discussions will lead to some changes that are something related to the Drupal Association, that this is actually part of the purview of the mission of the Drupal Association, since it's a charity and it's not, you know, a trade organization, that it has, you know, sort of a broad charter, yet these two specific things are usually what we understand the association to do. I just wondered how you thought that the community discussions fit into that mission.
That's a great question. The question is, we have a nice broad mission statement, but when you look at what we execute, we focus on 2 large platforms, DrupalCon and Drupal.org, and serve the community through that. But our mission being so broad, what is it, you know, are we looking to take on more as we go through these community discussions and governance? And for me, I think regardless of the community discussions, I want the association to be able to do more. Like, I'd love to keep stepping into our mission. I always see so much need, you know, it always pains me when we can't address it more and more broadly. And right now, because of the financial situation, we're getting our feet underneath us. We're focusing on the most core things to the community, and the 2 things that we've been asked to be stewards of, first and foremost, which is Drupal.org and DrupalCon. And through that, we are definitely becoming healthier as an organization and getting our feet underneath us. And I do want to look at how we can expand when we have the funds available to invest more broadly. Right, so that's just generally what I would like. And then as we go through this, these governance type of questions, will the community say, we want you to do something more, we want you to take something on? I certainly will want to help any way I can. At the same time, I have to remain sustainable, otherwise everything just falls and nothing gets done, right? So I have to balance both. Okay, well, I'm sure there are more questions, and I'm afraid we're out of time, but I'm really glad we could stay an extra 20 minutes and get all the questions out that we could. I'm an incredibly accessible person. I don't always get as many emails as I would think I'd get, but I don't. I mean, it's a 1 million person community. No, trust me, guys. I work really long hours, but it's a 1 million person community, and I think people don't realize just how accessible and easy it is for me to set up a time to talk with you. And so now that you've been here, you know me, please know that I would love to just sit down and chat if that's something that you'd like, if we didn't get to all of your questions, because I really care. I just think this community is pretty amazing. We are going through some interesting times. I'll just leave it at that. You can fill in the blank of other than interesting. But I also am the eternal optimist, and I know together we're going to come out and be a lot stronger because of this. So, but it's going to take all of us having these conversations to make that happen. So anyhow, with that, I'm going to conclude our first public board meeting of the year, and we'll have another one on June 26th. That one will be virtual, but also public. So you can go on to the association site and get the dates and times, and we'll be promoting that as well. And in the meantime, I hear your need for some more transparency in a couple different areas, but especially around the community discussions. And so I'll be working with Whitney right away, and we'll make sure that happens. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone.